Hey, it's me. Before we get started today, small favor. We've been doing this podcast for almost 2 years. And as it turns out, there's a lot of you out there listening. We are very grateful for that. But we want to know more about who you are. That way, maybe we can make more shows you like. So take a couple of minutes and fill out the Seattle Now listener survey, okay? You can find the link in the show notes of today's episode. And thanks.
Hey, good morning. It's Jeannie Yandel in for Patricia Murphy. It's Friday. This is Seattle Now. It's another casual Friday and another week filled with Omicron. At least the sun is out again after all that rain, and Seattle is making its way to the big screen as the setting for a new thriller. We'll get into all of that with Jadenne Radoc Cabahug and Scotty Cayton. But first, let's get you caught up. Hundreds of high school students in Seattle are planning to call out sick today, and some are considering walking out of classes next week. It's part of a push from students who want the district to improve its COVID protocols and be more transparent about how they're handling a huge spike in cases. Schools across the district have closed this week because there's not enough staff or substitutes to keep classes going. Parents and students say it was clear the Omicron spike was coming and the district should have planned better for it. Most high schools in the North Shore and Lake Washington school districts have gone remote until later in the month. Meanwhile, help is on the way to the state's maxed out hospitals. Governor Inslee said yesterday he's calling up 100 members of the National Guard to help crowded and short-staffed ERs around the state. They'll also stand up testing sites at hospitals in Seattle, Olympia, Tacoma, and Richland. Washington hit 1 million infections earlier this week. And Microsoft is making its sexual harassment investigations public, including one against founder Bill Gates. It's been almost 2 years since Gates stepped down from Microsoft's board of directors. And the investigation into his actions was never finished because he left the board when it was still happening. Microsoft also says it's hiring a law firm to review company policies and practices on sexual harassment and gender bias and compare them to best practices at other companies. We can expect all that information sometime this spring. Happy Friday, and what a week. It seems like half the schools in the city were closed at some point, or still are closed. And, okay, the rain. There has been so much rain. We've gotten more rain in the past 2 weeks than we normally get in all of January. So let's talk about all this. Scotty Cayton is here. They perform as drag queen Betty Wetter. Hi, Scotty.
Hi, thank you for having me back on the show. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh, I'm so happy you're here. Are you sick of the rain yet or no?
You know what? Honestly, I am a rain lover. But I came here today. I got to ask you, are you an umbrella or a raincoat person? That's my first question.
This is a trap because you're never supposed to say you're an umbrella person if you live in Seattle.
You always got to check.
Jadenne Radoc Cabahug is with us too. She's a UW journalism student and a former Seattle Now intern. Hi, Jadenne.
Hi, Jeannie. It's so good to be on Seattle Now, but as a guest. Thank you for having me here.
I'm so glad you're here. Okay, so we know that Scotty loves the rain. What about you? Are you one of those people who loves the rain?
I'm from Southern California, so I hate the rain. Yeah.
That's fair. That's fair. Thank you for your honesty. So, as I mentioned before, it was a tough week for a lot of families with kids in school. Schools all over the Seattle area closed entirely or shifted to a remote learning situation because of Omicron. Lowell Elementary in Seattle said 40% of their students were absent on Tuesday, and they're going to be remote until January 20th. Jadenne, the UW was also remote for the first week of school, and professors have the option to keep their classes remote until the end of the month. So what has that been like for you?
All of my professors have chosen to keep all their schools online until the end of January. And honestly, since I am from California, I don't like the rain, I don't like the cold, so this is like a step up for me, so I don't have to walk around on campus with lots of layers, because it's very... Nobody told me this, but when you're walking around, you wear a lot of layers, right, in the winter. But then you get hot inside of, like, all your coats. And so you're, like, obviously if you take off your jacket, you're like, well, I'm just waiting to get sick. I'm just waiting to get a cold.
I love your path to like reasoning with this moment in time.
I do too. It's making me realize that one of the problems with weather that like what we've been experiencing in the before times is, particularly if you were commuting somewhere, where were you supposed to put all those wet layers? Because it's all communal space and you can't just sort of lay all those things out to dry in your like lunchroom. Leaving aside the fact that the weather is kind of conspiring to keep you home anyway, Jadenne, what's your experience been like over the last couple of years with having school that is remote and then in person and then sort of remote, but also sort of choose your own adventure? I feel like that's what's happening right now for a lot of people with open schools. What's that been like for you?
My first year of university, sadly, freshman year, was all online. And so most of that, like at least for the first 2 quarters, was me just being a name on a screen. Sometimes you'll see my picture, but then for the most part, no one will really know what I look like. They'll just hear like an ominous voice in the giant Zoom conference, and that's it. But my quarter in person, that was really fun. I got to meet so many of my friends that I met online, which was so weird because I had been friends with them since like the beginning of the pandemic, right? But it was like, I know you, but I've never met you. And it's like, oh, you're actually 5'3". I thought you were like 5'7". That was like a really, really great experience. I got to learn so much about my professors. I really missed that. But for right now, I'm kind of happy my commute's only like a minute.
Yeah.
Just for now. But if it drags on to spring, then I'll be like, we have to go back in person. Yeah.
I know I'm thinking about this from the perspective of my 9-year-old and what I've watched, her go through. I mean, she never met her 3rd grade teacher. It was that whole year was online. And we decided to keep her home last week. Maybe naively, we had hoped that the numbers would go down by this week. LOL. At one point, I brought home a math worksheet for her from her teacher, and she looked at it and said, I don't understand this, and burst into tears. And it reminded me of the year that she was online, and she would have panic attacks during math class. And that was a huge decider for her to go back to school this week. Is amid all of this uncertainty, the one thing that I'm most certain about is how difficult it is for this particular 9-year-old to do online school. And so that really changed our thinking. It's a wild, wild ride. I don't know what else to say about it, without falling into profanities at this point. And Scotty, I wonder for you, obviously every public place is experiencing this question of whether to stay open or not. And when you were on the show back in October, you were out doing drag performances. Are you still doing that now?
I am not, actually. I've mostly been at home since December 19th. We had a few possible exposures at a show and a few positive tests from folks who showed up. So I kind of just hit the brakes. I don't want that on my conscience, and I hate to think of the consequences that go way beyond just people sitting in the audience. So I'm paused, and I really wanted to say today for this section of our conversation that patience and precaution are so incredibly important right now. My heart is going out to all of the people, particularly parents dealing with schools right now. That has got to be so tough. I'm available to babysit any vaccinated children. I'm off work this month. It's such a tough time, and there's so little guidance to tell us what to do. And, it was so hard. It broke my heart, but I just made the decision. Let's just call it. Let's get together when we can feel good about doing that.
So number one, Scotty, after this, you and I are going to talk about babysitting. I have a very precocious 9-year-old who's really bored right now.
Okay.
But you make a really good point about sort of not having a lot of guidance about what to do here. It's very strange to be at this point where cases and hospitalizations are really high. They're rising every day. And yet, if I wanted to go to a bar or out to dinner tonight, I could. I dropped my kid off at school this morning. one of the things I recall, I guess, from the early COVID days was discussions around how to talk through risk with other people in your community, right? This is when we were sort of in bubbles or pods, that kind of thing. Scotty, are you having those conversations now as well? I personally, for me, we've just sort of shut the doors beyond taking our kid to school. That's like the only risk vector we're entertaining.
To be completely honest, I have had those conversations with my partner about what risks we're willing to take. I have one or two friends who I trust what they're doing, what risks they're taking at the moment, and really just sticking to that. There's no, in my mind, I sat for 2 years already. I can sit for another month, while we wait. I can sit for a little bit longer. I just don't think the risk is worth it. I would love to be a person 30 years from now looking back and saying, I don't think I ever got COVID. I think that would be really, really great. So that is, and I'm very fortunate to have a partner who will sit down with me and say, hey, we're both freaking out. Let's not do anything. Let's think of creative things to do around here. And I'm very grateful for that. I think I would be like spinning around in circles wondering what to do otherwise.
Yeah. Oh, I'm on board with all of that. I guess one of the things we could do is watch one particular movie trailer set in Seattle, because there is a new trailer out for a film set here. I feel like it's worth noting that I did not see the Space Needle in every other shot of this trailer, so that felt really different. It's this thriller called Kimmy, and it's about a voice assistant that's always listening to you and reporting everything you do back to the company that makes it. In the film, it's a company called Amygdala.
Kimmy?
I'm here.
What time is it?
It's 7:26 a.m.
Kimmy?
I'm here.
Call Dr. Burns.
So the protagonist of this film listens to recordings from the smart speaker to basically fix times when it's not working properly. And in the course of doing her job, she hears what sounds like somebody being murdered. I have observed this. Scotty, I'm wondering if you've observed the same thing, that movies and TV shows about Seattle always seem to involve murder or vampires or both.
It's true, and we come from like a long history of that, don't we? I love it. I am so excited for this movie. First of all, when it was filming during quarantine, I was following that film crew around at any chance I could on my bicycle to see what they were doing. I won't talk any bad about smart speakers. Mine's right behind me, and I know it's listening.
Be very careful.
I'm super excited for this movie. I think it's thrilling. I love the whole like Black Mirror vibe of it that you get from the trailer. And we come from a place that we've got some really good movies. We got Twilight, Singles, 10 Things I Hate About You from all right around here. And like, this is just going to add to the list, right?
Yeah. That's a really good point, actually. And it was actually really cool to see so many places in Seattle in the trailer. Jadenne, what did you think of that when you saw that?
I thought it was super cool. I was like, oh my God, that's the idea. I spend a lot of time there because I go with my friends a lot to get food. Well, I did a couple of months ago. But I don't know. The topic of scary movies in general, they make my skin crawl. I think maybe it's just because when I was a kid, I hated scary movies. And if it's real life, with the smart speakers, I don't have a smart speaker, but I rely on Siri for everything. So I'll be like, hey, sorry, I'm whispering because I don't want
you don't
her
want to wake it up.
Yeah, I'll be like, oh yeah, set a timer for this, or I'm like, what does this mean? And so I basically just ask her everything, and I'm like, oh, what if she's always listening to me? I mean, not that I'm doing anything illegal.
Let's be clear.
Yes, no, I'm not murdering anyone no. It's just I don't know. I think it's really weird.
Yeah. If you say you're not murdering anybody on a podcast, that basically legally protects you from any sort of prosecution. So you're fine.
Wait, no. I'm not murdering anyone. We're all meeting virtually. I'm in my room alone.
Yes. Okay, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much to our guests, drag queen Scotty Cayton, a.k.a. Betty Wetter. Thanks, Scotty.
I have had just a blast. I'm going to go bake some bread or watch Tiger King, or I don't know what you do during quarantine anymore.
It's March 2020 all over again. Yay.
Oh, no.
And UW journalism student Jadenne Radoc Cabahug, thank you so much. It was so great to have you on.
Thank you. It was so good to see you guys again. I missed you guys all these months, and it was great to be on the show.
Thank you for coming on. Have a great weekend, you two. Thanks for hanging out with us on Casual Friday. Clare McGrane produced this show. Matt Jorgensen does our theme music. I'm Jeannie Yandel. Patricia Murphy will be back next week. Have a great weekend.
Hey, Seattle Now listeners, I'm Libby Dankman, and I'd like to invite you to check out a new local show from KUOW. It's called Soundside. Every week, we'll bring you stories and conversations about the Puget Sound region and the people who call it home. You can catch Soundside live on KUOW Monday through Thursday at noon, or in your podcast app. Just search for Soundside. Thanks, and talk soon.